Hello and welcome to Talking Shit About. I'm your host, Elizabeth Wibberman, and each month I bring on a guest to talk about something they love, something they hate, something they've been through, or something they just know a lot about. And hopefully by the end we've all learned something. Before getting into today's episode, I want to share some exciting show updates. You may have noticed that I redesigned the show logo and I've got a fancy new color scheme on the social media. And I also have been released, well, so far only one has been released, but I am releasing little microsodes in between full episodes. Full episodes come out the first Friday of the month, and microsodes come out the third Friday of the month. So I hope you enjoy these little, about 5-minute snippets of loosely educational material. I've been having a lot of fun with them, especially the ASMR ones, so go ahead and check that out. And we also have a Patreon now, patreon.com/talkingshitabout. You can get weekly bonus content, which is stuff that I won't post anywhere else, or early access to episodes, and the ability to ask questions of guests before I record the interviews, and all sorts of stuff. So again, you can check that out at patreon.com/talkingshitabout. Let's give a big old shout out and round of applause to my girl Cassie for being my first Patreon subscriber. Thank you, Cassie. I love you. If you look at my Patreon, you'll see, I think as of right now of this recording, there are 3 subscribers. Those other 2 are actually from when my Patreon was an art-based Patreon. So those are not active subscribers. They're just, the only way to get rid of them is to block them, and I don't want to do that in case they want to decide to support this project. So again, thank you, Cassie. I love you. I love your baby. I love you so much. And with that, let's go ahead and get into this interview. I had a great time talking with Pam and Amy with Canned Conversations About Getting Fired. And I am so excited to share the wealth of knowledge that they have. And of course, I have information on how to listen to their show and get in touch with them in the show notes. So let's go ahead and talk some shit.
I was like, what the fuck does that mean? I have friends that are firefighters and I know that they use soap.
And she was screaming at me over soup.
Fuck this, I am not ever talking to a Scientologist again. These people are all insane.
I'm putting my bricks in the dumpsters, motherfuckers. Do you see me, bitches? I'm throwing my bricks. And he's just like chucking bricks.
Hello, Amy and Pam. Welcome to Talking Shit About. How are you guys doing?
Great.
Good, thanks.
Good.
Very
Well,
excited to be on something called Talking Shit About.
yes, and I'm so excited for you guys to be here. I love the premise of your show. And with that, do you want to introduce yourselves and a little bit about Canned?
Yeah, my name is Pam Mandel, and I am the host of Canned Conversations About Getting Fired.
And I am Amy Guth, and I produce Canned Conversations About Getting Fired. And Pam and I collaborate on lots of creative stuff, but we sure have a lot of fun with this project in particular.
Yeah. So how long has the show been going on for?
I think we started production in June last year. We are staring down the end of our first full year. I think our first episodes, I would have to look it up, but I think we started in July. Is that right, Amy?
I think so. Yeah, I think it was right at the beginning of July.
Yeah.
Gotcha. And your podcast is stories of people being fired, is that right?
It's conversations with people who have been fired. And then the other thing that we do is we talk to people who have advice or insight into what it means to get fired.
Yeah. For example, we talked to a therapist about, recognizing that that's a very real trauma, and it's okay to give yourself time to grieve. Pam just had a really great conversation with a labor organizer in the UK, and it was awesome to get his perspective. And of course, he had a beautiful accent that I could have just listened to all day long. We've talked to, HR people. There was an employment attorney who was so very funny and charming, and just like all these people that give all this great insight about, all the components of getting fired and what that looks like.
And what inspired the podcast?
I got fired. At the most basic, that was it. I got fired and I sat on my couch petting my dog for a while. And I thought, what the fuck just happened? Right? Like, what happened? Everything seemed fine. And I thought I was doing a good job. And now my job is gone. And I thought about how fucked up that was and how we don't talk about it. We're really embarrassed about getting fired. And I thought, that's not what I want to do at all. I actually want to talk about it. And I messaged Amy and said, Amy, I have this idea.
And I think my response was all caps, fuck yeah, let's do that.
It was exactly that. Yeah.
And you know, I think it's so interesting because we, you know, Pam has talked to people from so many different careers and so many different people from so many different backgrounds, but there are some themes that keep coming up over and over and over, and they're so powerful and so interesting. And you know, one of them, like the big one, is always, why do we internalize it so much? That, like, even when you know, there's one where this guy is talking about his boss is throwing things around the office. The boss's son is handing him objects to keep throwing. Like, that's by
Oh my
all
God.
accounts a very unhinged situation. And yet the guy was still like, you know, I could, you know, he still felt like there's this sheepishness that, you know, that's hard to say, sheepishness that comes along with it, because, you know, we get so, like, especially under, you know, capitalism and Western culture, we're like so tied to productivity defining us and all that. And it's just so interesting how that comes out across the board. It's so fascinating to me.
Pam, had you ever been fired before this last incident?
I had to think about it for a really long time, whether or not I'd just been sort of axed like this, summarily axed. I've been laid off lots. My day job is in tech, and layoffs are just part and parcel of working in the tech economy. But this was different because it was just me, and it was personal, right? Like it wasn't like it's you and 400 of your closest friends, or it's you in your entire department, or your company used to make widgets and now they don't make widgets anymore, so all the widget makers are out. It wasn't like that at all. It was just me. And so I had not been fired in this kind of capacity previously.
So, what are some other things that you've learned since starting the show?
Oh,
Sounds like
Oh
wow.
man.
Right, right. This is a whole can of worms, what we have learned since starting the show. We could probably talk for a whole hour on this topic alone
Yeah.
because there's so much there. Should we just lob things back and forth, Amy?
Yeah.
What do you
Let's
think?
just start lobbing the things.
hell yeah.
Okay, I'm going to start with number one, which is that I would say that 97% of the time it's not your fault. It's
Yeah.
nothing to do with you at all. You got fired for reasons that are completely separate from your job. There's something else going on. Even if they tell you it's you, it's not you.
And kind of related to that, you almost never get the real story unless you just did something so just unhinged that got you fired and you're like, yeah, I deserve to get fired, which is not a theme we hear really at all. Unless you full on know it, there's always a cover story. And I think that's so interesting. So in almost every episode, Pam always says, what do you think really happened? Because it'll be like, oh, they called me in and this is what happened. And then it's like, what really happened? And they always trace it back to like something usually interpersonal, right? Like my boss just didn't fucking like me. They just kind of had it out for me. I looked like their ex-wife or whatever it was. They just like, you know, they it's always something like kind of personal. And obviously you can't fire somebody just because you don't like them. And so they'll kind of like wait and ready, like be ready to pounce on the littlest infraction, or they'll just kind of make up something, or like a put them on like a ridiculous performance plan that is impossible to win or whatever. But it seems like nobody ever gets the real story. And I that just makes me cringe. And I really hate biz speak anyway. And I think it's such horseshit. And I just wish people would say what they mean. But that seems like just such an egregious use of biz speak, of just like not, you don't even give someone the decency of saying like, I don't think you're just not a good fit here. You don't get along with people here. It sucks for you here. And we don't like having you here either, or whatever it is. You just never get like the real story. And so people are left wondering like years later, like, well, I think this is what happened. I think that, they just didn't like me, or I think that they were mad because I broke a dish this one time, or whatever it is. They just, and like a couple of people have said, like, I kind of had to take the fall. In particular, I'm thinking about an episode about a cater waiter, and she brought a friend to a gig to cover because they were short staffed, and the friend was drunk and acted inappropriately at a celebrity's home, and it's a very funny episode. But she ended up getting fired in front of the celebrity, along with, like, obviously the friend was not welcome back, but she kind of understood, like, yeah, somebody had to sort of take the fall because the celebrity was like really looking at all of us there. But again, it's never just like, it's never the truth. And I think people, that sits with people and it hurts them for years and years later.
In my job that I just quit, I had a coworker who was demoted, and she was told that it was because there was a lack of funding, even though they were able to hire someone else for basically the same position. I remember how confused she was and frustrated because she's like, I know that there's something else going on, but they're just not willing to tell me. And
Yeah,
yeah,
it's always
that's
bullshit. It's always bullshit.
I also think that we don't acknowledge how personally destabilizing it is. We act like, society-wise, we act like this is the thing that happens all the time, right? It's all the time. People lose jobs all the time. It's not a big deal. You'll find another job, yada, yada, yada. And it occurred to me when I got canned that typically the person who's telling you this, like you're going to be okay, you'll land on your feet, is they have a paycheck.
Mm-hmm.
And then your paycheck is gone.
Yeah.
I've heard a number of people tell me on the record and off that they are fired by people who really are very upset. Like they cry, people are crying. They're like, so your boss is crying while they're firing you. They feel really bad about what's happening to you. And every time I hear this story, I think, fuck them,
Yeah.
because they're not the person whose paycheck and benefits and livelihood and stability is going away. Yeah, it's a dirty job. It sucks to have to fire somebody. It sucks to fire somebody if you don't want to do it. It sucks to have to fire somebody if you disagree with the decision. Even if you do, it's a sucky task. And suck it up, pal, because tomorrow you
Yeah.
still have a job.
Yeah.
And I'm really struck with how much we're supposed to be empathetic with the employer, but the employee just gets the shove. They don't get any love.
Yeah.
And I've been struck with that too, about how much language there is about protecting the employer versus protecting the worker. And Amy mentioned our episode with the union guy, but we also have a great conversation with a woman named Rebecca Weaver, and she runs an HR consultancy. And she talks a lot about how HR, it's not right that HR is the organization assigned to protect the company and the worker. It's a direct conflict of interest. And so
Mhm.
they can't really do their job when their job is to put the company first. Nobody puts the worker first.
I thought she had so many good points. At one point, she was kind of listing out all of the ethical issues wrong with HR. And at one point she said something to the effect of, yeah, the person that is dealing with disciplinary issues and behavioral problems should not be the same person that's deciding whether or not you get a raise or you get a promotion in the company. And I'd never framed it that way, because we just sort of take HR at face value. It's there. Yeah, they're sure it's to protect the company, even though they tell you it's for the worker. I thought that was just, I thought her episode was really fascinating, because she really is she's taking on a lot. She's trying to sort of revolutionize the way we think about HR. And as she was talking, I was like, oh my God, I knew it was broken. I didn't know how broken.
Yeah. No, that is very well put. Go ahead, Amy.
Another thing that stands out to me, there was an episode with a woman who wrote a memoir. She lost her job while her husband was already unemployed, and they, I believe, had one or two small children at the time, and she ended up writing this book about it. And she pointed out, and since that episode, I've been hyper aware of this, and it absolutely tracks across the board. The way we talk about women losing jobs and the way we talk about men losing jobs. For him, it was very, people were like, oh, is he okay? Oh, is he, like, as if like they recognize that this was an identity piece to him and providership and all that shit. And for her, it was like, oh, well, at least you get to spend more time with your kids now. It was just, it was very much like, deep down, oh, well, you get the, you can scurry on back to the private sphere, but your husband, that poor man, he can't be the big protector of the household. And since that episode, I've been really listening for that. And as I've heard, of course, there's so many people losing jobs now, both firing and layoffs, and people that are just quitting them. But unemployment, I've been really paying attention to how I've heard people talk about it. And it's fascinating how people absolutely like, oh, did you hear so-and-so's husband lost his job, and that must be so terrible for them. And but then with women, it's like, oh, but she can, maybe take some time for herself, or she's got a husband, it's okay. But nobody ever says like, well, his wife makes money, he's okay. Nobody says that. It's always like the man's issue is dire, the women, she'll be fine. It's very infuriating to me.
That's her name's Liz Alterman. The book's called Sad Sacked, and it's a really fast read, and it's funny, and it's a mess, man. What I went through is a mess. The timing is terrible. I'm not sure if I'm remembering this correctly, but I believe that that they were both employed for an overlap of 9 months, and then he was unemployed first. And
Yeah,
it was just like a long, long era that was very, very, very difficult for them financially. And yeah, that was definitely what stuck with me from talking with her too, was this notion of like this incredible sexist bullshit about how she could go make cupcakes and be part of the PTA, but he really, really, really needed to get a job. Yeah.
infuriating.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally
is.
maddening. Yeah.
I think too, like a recent theme that's come up is I've seen a shift since the podcast started of, because there's always the question, Pam always asks them, what are you doing now? And some people are like, well, I'm still looking for work. But mostly people kind of landed on their feet eventually, and they all seem to do something really remarkable. I mean, one person was a personal assistant for some 1%er aristocrat in Europe somewhere. And she's like, I'm raising chickens now. It's fine. I have a nice little cottage. Like a lot of people went like, I started a business after this. It was like this push that brought them to, you know what, this is such bullshit. I'm never going to put myself in this position again. But on the same token, there's people that are maybe not interested in entrepreneurship that have been, there's a shift in how it's been like, yeah, I'm still kind of looking, to now the last few episodes in particular, it seems like there's a shift to, it's really fucking hard out there. And here's why. It's different. It's not just a hard market. It's that if you don't have a tricked out for AI resume, you won't even get in the slush pile in the first place. And it was like, there is a level of direness that's different now. And I've noticed that tone kind of changing through the months on the podcast for sure.
Are you familiar with like, I can't remember the exact term, but it's like ghost positions or ghost
Oh yeah.
postings?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, ghost jobs. Ghost
Yeah.
jobs.
Yeah.
Yeah, some time ago, that term came up from a friend of mine, and I was like, that can't be real. What are you talking about? That's the kind of what do you want about? And I have since read a fair bit of business press about ghost jobs and how, yeah, that's a thing. And they are designed to make it look like the company is hiring when they don't actually have any intention of doing so. So they're like a fake growth metric. Like, look at all these open positions we have. Look at all these interviews we're doing, but there's no intention of filling those jobs. And there's no way to distinguish them as somebody who's looking for work from jobs that are of this world, shall we say, compared to jobs that exist in the Netherlands of the afterlife.
Yeah.
There's no way to tell them apart.
That's like, what a time to be alive, honestly. I mean, so many times we talk about, and a couple of times we've gotten on the mic and just done an episode and recorded ourselves talking about something, but it's like, the thing that we keep coming back to is like the worker is basically fucked, and it's getting worse and worse by the day. And we always kind of knew we were fucked, but now no one's even trying to hide it at this point, right? There's like fake jobs just to boost metrics, and there's like HR is maybe spending less time trying to say that we're here for you. No, we're here to protect the company from getting sued. Like it just seems like the gloves are off in a new way, and it's just, I don't know, all bets are off. And it's like as if the world is not already disturbing enough right now, as if there's not already enough to just watch and go holy shit about, that like this part that's so very personal and so very important to your very existence and your livelihood, and all, everything depends on you having the means to do so. That part has gotten infected with this just lunacy right now. It's so disturbing and bizarre. I mean, it's bizarre. And Pam, I think like maybe twice, you said it in the last episode, and I think maybe the episode before last, someone started to say like, you're not going to believe me, it's really a crazy story. And it's like, no, we will. We've heard,
Absolutely. Yeah.
We will.
Yeah.
We know
Yeah.
it's this bad. Go for it.
Yeah. I was thinking about when I talked to Jez, he was the union guy. I was struck with the difference between the notion of union protections for workers in the UK versus what we have here in the US, which is almost nothing. And I was really envious. I super wanted to be in a union. I don't have a place where I exactly fit for my job to do union work. But one of the things that he said that I'm still thinking about, I talked to him 2 months ago, something like that. And I was thinking about how he was talking about how unions want they want organizations to be successful because they want there to be jobs. And in the US, we have such an anti-union bias. We've been raised with such an anti-union bias to think that unions are bad for businesses. And he was very clear and spoke very candidly about how that's not actually true at all. We want businesses that are good places to work. And if they're not good places to work, that's a problem. But unions don't want businesses to fail. They want workers to thrive.
Yeah.
And those are two really different ways to think about what unions are doing. They're not there to shut the shop down, because if there's shop shut down, there's no jobs, and no one wants that.
Yeah. And so often, you'll hear business leaders underlining that kind of anti-union sentiment with it's about money and they're trying to break this company. But it's like, my dude, if you have built your company on the premise of exploiting workers and paying them like shit, I don't know what to tell you. I don't think your business model was ever really worth a damn to begin with. And he makes that point again and again in the episode. But yeah, I know, I was like, in that episode, I too was like, oh, we need not just a union, but a UK union in particular. The vibe was different. It was like a lot more civilized, a little bit less adversarial interaction between worker and ruling class a bit.
Yeah, it was very collaborative, right?
Yeah.
It sounded like they wanted to encourage these very collaborative relationships between the companies and the workers and the unions. And here in the US, it seems like it's very adversarial. And so that was really interesting to hear about it from that perspective too.
Yeah, he was an interesting guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they've all been interesting. They really have. And so often I feel like this came up in a big way with Melissa. We had this woman who she was a lawyer, and she was roller skating across the United States in an act of activism to raise awareness about murdered and missing Indigenous women. And she, I mean, literally, she did it too. She roller skated across the US, and she stopped and like talked to Pam in a truck with her two dogs somewhere in Montana or something. It was like,
yeah, it was Montana. Yeah.
right. But it was like where it went south for her is she was standing up for the truth. Like, she was doing the right thing because she had a bunch of white coworkers. She herself is Native, and she was like, you're dealing with these people inappropriately. There is some cultural competency you need when you're talking with these families who are grieving or who are worried or whatever. And there was like all this pushback. And so it became about like this really strange identity politics sort of thing. But it was about like she stood up for the right thing and she stood up for the truth and was just trying to say, hey, do better, be a little more culturally sensitive. And I'm here to help you do that. And that really, rather than her boss saying, thank you, oh my God, I'm so embarrassed. Thank you for saving me from myself. I'm going to do better. They were really crappy to her about it. And they were really quite mean about it. And I feel like we've had a couple of those where it's like, if you stand up for the truth, we had a multimedia producer on not long ago who was just kind of like, yeah, why do I have to get a number rating? Can I just do my work and be awesome? Can I just sort of do that? And it seemed like anytime someone stood up for a big truth or even a small truth or just sort of called it out and just said like, hey, can we just like look at the man behind the curtain and admit this is all kind of theater? There was always like a swift punishment for them. And I've been thinking a lot about how a system will punish you, a system that was never meant for you anyway, meaning everyone who's not like a white man, cishet, white man, will punish you for not supporting it and not, it's never there to protect you in the first place, but it will be the first to slap you on the wrist if like you fall out of line or if you question it or any of that. And I feel like that's come up a lot in really interesting ways with folks too.
So I'm definitely going to link to the union episode that you guys mentioned because I think that's super interesting.
It's fascinating.
Amy, yeah. Amy, you were talking earlier about the state of the world and all of that, and it got me thinking about AI. And I was curious if you guys have talked to anybody who either has had their work threatened by or have lost their job due to AI.
Yeah, I don't think it has really come up other than the job search part.
Yes.
a re-
So
yeah.
the most recent episode, which is with a design manager, it's a great episode. He talks a lot about sort of Gen X politics, and he talks extensively about not about AI taking his job away specifically, but about how AI has changed what we expect from work and also from the job search process.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting because he talks about how it feels like we've sort of come full circle on AI for job search because when AI first started getting involved in job searches, it was filtering stuff out, it was filtering stuff out, and then people were like, "Oh, I need to feed the machine." And so everybody was tailoring their resumes so they matched the AI algorithm. They're like, oh, I don't need to write this resume for humans. I need to write it to get past the AI robot gatekeepers. The result being that every single person who applies for a job nowadays and knows how to use AI tools to tailor their resume is able to make their resume match the job requirements, whether they have the requirements or not. So standing out has defaulted back to word of mouth. We've come full circle because you can't trust the AI gatekeeper to have you stand out if you're not a complete match. But if you are a complete match, you might be a complete match because you've tailored your resume for the job using AI. It's this weird employment robots eating their own tails kind of
Right.
thing. And we're all sort of standing outside it being like, is that thing done eating itself yet? Because I really could use a job and I would like to get out of this weird cycle where I'm throwing my resume into the void and hearing nothing back, even though I'm supremely qualified, because it doesn't, you can't stand out anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought that was a really interesting point that he made, right? That it was about the way that we are advancing is through, through word of mouth and through our networks. But he was throwing his resume out to the void to satisfy the requirements to continue getting unemployment. He's like, I'm doing that. I'm applying for stuff. Once in a while, they might call me back, but usually not. I'm, sending all these applications out so I can prove that I'm trying and keep getting my unemployment check. But any gigs, any temporary gigs or short-term kind of projects I've gotten have all been word of mouth. And I just think that's interesting. And he brought up the connection to access and if you don't have access to the right, country club to go schmooze the right people that are gatekeeping the kind of job you want, you're just kind of fucked then. If the only means you have, if you're maybe early career or whatever, you just don't have access to anything but just throwing your resume out into that pool. And then it just becomes like, that becomes so depressingly dire so quickly.
It's weird because it's made it this tool that was supposed to make it easier for people to get matched for jobs has ultimately made it harder.
Mm-hmm.
And it's excluded all kinds of people. And we're back to this weird good old boys network to get
Yeah.
jobs. And it felt for a while like maybe we were starting to leave some of that behind. Not entirely, but to
Right.
some degree. And I will say that the tech company that I worked for, I guess it's 3 years ago now, I was on a highly technical project, and my team was all women. And it was actually remarkable. I was like, what is happening here? How is it that there are no dudes on this team? In high tech and something this complex, to be in a team that was all women was pretty exceptional. And now I don't know. I don't know what's happening. I just don't know what's happening. And AI is playing a role in that it is filtering people on these very specific requirements. And if you're not a perfect match, you never get the call. And that excludes people who have amazing potential, say, right? Everybody, okay, maybe not everybody, but most people can learn to do new things. So, but because we're in this era of specificity when it comes to job searching and you can't get the call unless you're a perfect match, we're being denied the opportunity to learn to do new things unless we've bypassed this process entirely. So that sure makes it hard to experience any kind of growth, I think.
I had no idea that AI was being used in that way. Always new nightmares unlocked. I love it.
Apologies.
It's all good. So, do you guys have any words of wisdom for people who have been recently laid off?
Yes, we do. We have every single guest has words of wisdom, really. What stands out to me is the things that, again, people from vastly different walks of life have given the same thing. And it's always some version of give yourself a minute and find your center for a second. And like, yes, you probably do need to go find a way to find money and get your, shit together, but also like give yourself a minute. And it's funny, the number that always comes up when a couple people have said, I just went to bed, people like that work remotely. They're like, I just got back in bed, but it's always 2 hours. They always say like 2 hours. I just went and sat on my couch for 2 hours. I just went and got in bed for 2 hours. It's always like 2 hours. I don't know what the magic thing is about 2 hours, but it seems like, and the therapist that Pam talked to really, really underscored this of like, it is an actual trauma. It is a trauma, and let yourself have it and give yourself a minute to just kind of feel that and process before you do any really unhinged thing. But like, give yourself a minute to have your moment, and then start talking to your network, and then like look at your financial picture and like what needs, what expenses need to get cut, things like that. But it was that take a minute first before you do anything else, that has just come up in, I think, every single episode, for real.
Yeah, there's definitely a call to lean on your people, right? Like find your people and hang out with them. Like let them buy you ice cream, let them take you for pizza and beer, sit on the couch and cry, and let them pat you on the back while you do that, right? Like make the space for people around you to support you. That seems really important. The video production guy, he talks about how there was a conference room firing in this. They fired a whole team, And he talks about how they all sort of like walked in this haze back to their desks and they're all calling each other, right? Like, did you hear who got it? Do you know who else is on there? Like that, but there's like this very important network of information that you can't tap into too soon. Um, but actually the other thing that I think about now in ways that I really should have been thinking about my whole career, and only since running Canned have I thought about this, um, is even before you see the writing on the wall, is you should always be backing up your work to a local server. You should be backing up those emails with your boss that make you feel a little bit weird. You keep the records, right? You need
Mhm.
to be, because again, HR is not going to help you. They're not going to recover this stuff for you. They are not going to do the work. And it is entirely possible that at the moment that the axe drops, you're going to be locked out and you are not going to be able to get access to your work. And this dramatic dogs, I
Yes,
love
she's a
them.
husky mix.
Oh, there you go. So you have a talker.
Yes.
Yeah. The video producer talks about how in his job, it's really quite striking. He says, this was the best work of my career up to this point, and I couldn't get it. It was on the
Mm.
server and I couldn't get access to it. So you shouldn't just be pulling down those passive aggressive emails or those weird reviews where you're like, I thought I was doing a good job, or those requests for help when when you're very clear with your employer, like, I need support in these areas, and they're like, yeah, 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 we'll work that out. And then 2 months later, you get your hand slapped for it, and you're like, dude, I asked for help on this. It shouldn't be just that. It should also be all your good work too, because you could lose access to it. And then, like, you don't have a case should you need one. Should you decide to take action, should you feel like you were treated unjustly, right? So if you have a string of emails where you're begging your employer to support you in something and they never come through, and then you get fired for not doing a good job at the thing that you've been asking for support in, that's on them. That's not on you. But if you can't access that stuff, you have no case, right? You need to have the evidence. You have to be your own advocate from like day one that you get a job. And then you have to also be super careful to keep all your best stuff where you can get to it, because you can lose access to it. And then, this poor video producer guy, he's like, I'm like walking out the door and I've been doing the best work of my career and I have no portfolio because it's
Mm.
all locked on their servers. I got nothing. Right? So now he's in this place where he's going to talk to potential employers and he has nothing to show them because he's lost access to all of his work. It's heartbreaking.
Yeah, I feel like there's been a lot of people that have said, while I was in the conference room getting fired, they were locking changing my password. They were deleting my email. It was
Yeah.
gone. Like,
Yeah.
gone. I mean, that's so stunning to me. I mean, what comes to mind a lot working on this is early in my career, I had this wonderful mentor named Julie, and and she, I was trying to like impress her, and when she was newly my boss, and trying to make a point to like stay late or whatever. And she was like, "Hey, here's the thing. I'm staying late just because I'm going to meet my husband for dinner and he's going to come down here, but for real, don't stay late." And I was like, no, I'm just working on some stuff. She's like, I know that you think maybe it makes you look like you're working harder, but it actually, to me, makes you look like you can't handle the work I've given you. So don't do that. Which I was like, oh, that's actually a very good tip. But then we became very good friends. And she was like, remember, even if you love the work you are doing, she was like, love the work you're doing and love the humans that you're doing it with, but never love the job. The job cannot love you back. The work can give you things, give you more things that you love. The people you're working with, you can keep relationships with them for the rest of your life, but the job can never love you back. And I feel like there have been so many themes of that with people that I know that have like, man, I gave my all to that fucking place and this is how they treat me. And it's happened again and again on the podcast of people that were like, this was my dream job. I did not have a backup plan. This is what I wanted to do. This is what I loved. I didn't know. My world spun out from under me. And it was like this theme of like, not to say that anyone was over giving or anything like that, but it's like just this good reminder of like, do what you're hired to do and don't overgive. Like, have a good boundary, take your paid time off if you have it, use those things, because it's not going to love you back. The work can be generative for you down the road and support you down the road, like in the case of having a portfolio of wonderful work. The people can be someone that hires you to something later, or someone you collaborate with or start a business with or whatever, but the job can't love you back. And at the end of the day, like, you're on a spreadsheet and they'll be like, yeah, you make too much money, get out of here. Like, anything can make the axe drop.
We've had a bunch of people who talk about regretting giving so much of themselves to their place of employment and how they're not going to do that again.
Yeah.
And are just like, yeah, it's 6 o'clock. I turn off my computer. I don't do email on the weekends. I'm not giving myself to my employer that way anymore. I won't do that again because they don't reciprocate.
Yeah.
So I think keeping in mind that they're not going to, no matter how much you love your job and how much you love your boss and how much you are happy about the work you're doing, I think it's really important to keep in mind that you are a person serving an organization, and you want to keep those things in balance.
Yeah. And it seems like everyone we've talked to that really, really made an effort to try to play the game the way the boss wanted it. And we have a very extreme example of that pretty early on with a chiropractor who, like, his boss was into Scientology, and he went and like learned about Scientology just to be kind and like frame things in a Scientology-y kind of way, even for like dispute resolution. Like, he really went out of his way, and like, that didn't matter. It didn't matter. It's also a very funny episode because the day he gets fired, it's a weekend and he's going to go to a dance competition. So he shows up as the chiropractor in his like 90s dance outfit. And I just picture this guy like adjusting people's backs with like hammer pants. And that's just delights me to no end. But like, people have done, there was like an editorial director. I think that was her job. And she kind of said the same thing. She's like, in my new job, no, I turn my shit off at 6 and I'm done. It's like, I'm not a dick. I'm not a team player. I'm not doing anybody favors, mostly me, by, giving the extra mile, always being the one to volunteer for the extra shit or the volunteer shit or to organize it. Like, that's not what we're doing here. No.
Do you guys have any opinions or thoughts on bosses or Marty or organizations that say we're like a family? It's a family.
Oh yeah, fuck that.
Yeah, fuck that.
It's like a family. Let me just say it very directly. Fuck that. No, it is not like a family. It is absolutely not. You know what? They are not going to stop what they're doing to take me to the doctor at 6 a.m. They're not going to take that call. And, like when I break my leg, they are not going to come mow my lawn. So what do they mean when they say that? That's like a family? No, absolutely fucking not. No.
Yeah, absolutely fucking not. That's always code for, we want you to do a bunch of emotional labor here. And I say, absolutely the fuck not. No, not going to do that. In settings where I've heard things like that, I usually kind of laugh at it, but I've also been always quick to add like, yeah, I live about 1,000 miles away from my family. So there's that.
Yeah, which family exactly are we talking about? Whose family? Because you want to hear about mine before you tell me that we're like a family? Because
you want to have that kind of dynamic? Okay, let's go there.
Yeah, I feel you, Pam. I was in a meeting with a couple coworkers, and Marty, she really wants to go on the porch, but if I let her on the porch, she's going to start barking. So with a bunch of coworkers, and one of them was like, there was some interpersonal conflict happening, and one of them, who was the supervisor of the rest of them, was like, oh, I just want to protect you guys because I'm just a mama bear. And one of them goes, you are not my mom. This is work. And I was just like, damn. Like, it was like, did not miss a beat, just laid it
That's
down.
excellent. I
That's
love
Yes.
that. It's
That's
so
awesome.
good. Yeah. Are you baking me cookies? Are you bringing me soup when I'm sick in bed? What? No, you're not doing that? Sit down.
Right?
So, do you guys have any advice for people who are currently job seeking right now?
Wow. I mean, I'm
Mm.
currently job seeking.
Yeah.
I think we talked about that notion of tapping your network and how AI is making things harder. I think we are all faced with the need for Herculean amounts of patience right now. Things are rough out there, man. They're rough out there. In my 20 something year career, I've never seen a market like this. And I've been through lots of rounds of layoffs, and I've never seen a market where there's so much silence in response, right? And
Hmm.
some of it, I think, is those ghost jobs you referred to earlier. Some of it, I think, is the uncertainty that's coming with the political climate. Like nobody knows what to do because maybe tomorrow we'll all need magic beans instead of cash. Who knows? So I think that we have to be super patient in ways that we haven't had to be before. Things are going to take longer. I talked with a financial planner. There's that episode with this financial planner, and she said that a person should have 3 months, 3 to 6 months of their expenses in cash saved up, right? So you got to, I know that's the face I made. I was like, really? Um, so, uh, she was like, you really need to have this cash on hand. And then the other thing that she said, which I found very sobering, she was like, we need to talk about ageism. If you are maybe over 55 or older and you find yourself out of a job, you may be changing your career at this point. You may not be getting back in, and you may need to think about like, this is not the plan you had. You may need to revise that because maybe you're being forced into early retirement by this market. Maybe you need to get that bagging groceries, selling art supplies, whatever kind of job that working at the Trader Joe's instead of thinking of yourself as a person with a professional career, if that's where you're coming from. So I think that, I think her advice was sound tactically. Financially, it's coming from the presumption that you are a person who can save up 3 to 6 months of money. You have the income for that. And so that's a little bit targeted for a specific class of people. But I think the notion of like stockpile some cash, pal, is a solid point to make, regardless of what your personal economy is. But because we're in this weird era, I think it's really hard to give advice to job seekers right now. Be patient, um, bury the gold in the yard, and work your network, like that episode that Dylan, where Dylan talks about these AI machines that are in the way and how we have to rely on our network. I think that that is more true than ever because I feel like that's the only way through at this point is via our network, via like who are we talking to, right? Tell everybody. Which actually brings me to something that is a sort of an additional point, which is, you've been fired and you're feeling really bad about it and you don't want to talk about it because it's embarrassing. But I think it's really important to let people know that you need work, right? It's not your fault that you got fired. And so don't be a dick about it. And be like, yeah, this fucked up thing happened to me and now I don't have a job and I need a job. Who do you know? Hook me up. Let me talk to your people. I will say that in previous down markets, I have done a thing where I just start going to breakfast with everyone I know, right? Like I just start calling all my friends who are somehow work adjacent. Like I start with people who I've worked with in the past, right? And I start calling them up and being like, hey, Let's go to breakfast. I haven't seen you in a million years. I go with no agenda. They ask me what I'm up to. I tell them I'm looking for work, and that's about it. Right? I think it's really important to put the word out on your organic network that you need help and that you're looking. And given circumstances, it may be the only way any of us are finding a job anymore.
Yep.
Yeah, I right before you said that, I wrote a little note to myself to bring that very topic up because that's really been that's really stood out to me in some of the with some of the guests that have been on Canned, of the power of, there's a lot of ways to do it. You can send an email out to everybody in your address book and go, here's the deal, folks. But also you don't have to linger on it and give like a play by play of I got fired and this is what happened and fuck those people. You could just be like, I'm looking for work. You actually don't have to get into it, and say what kind of work you want. But over and over, there's been this theme of like, work your network without shame. Because look, 3 days ago, I got an email from someone who wanted to know why my work email wasn't working. And he was referring to a place that I have not worked in 12 years.
Oh, wow.
Like, well, it's not working because I have not been there in a very long time. He's like, oh, I was trying to reach out to you about something. Well, and maybe check your LinkedIn, bro, because I haven't been there in a minute, right? And I just thought that was so fascinating. It was like, and this is not someone that I think is of as like a far-flung person. This is like someone I think of as in my network who knows, like, we know of each other and know of each other's work. There's a lot of information and people are overwhelmed, and for sometimes as self-conscious as we might feel about being public or whatever, putting ourselves out there, like, no one's fucking paying attention to us, really. If someone can send you an email, like, how come your 12-year-old, your email from 12 years ago isn't working? Like, no one's paying attention, even people in your network. And you have to really tell them, and you can do it without shame. You can do it. You don't have to unpack the whole thing. You can do it without anger. You can just be like, I am looking for work. You don't have to say more than that. You don't owe anyone an explanation, but just to work that angle. I feel like there's been so many guests that have said that that's what turned it. That's what changed things for them of, oh, I landed on my feet pretty quickly because I, started getting coffee with people, or because I sent an email out, or I, called my alumni association, or whatever they did. It seems like it's always like something comes in. The people that did land quickly, it's always because they just sort of worked their network.
People want to help.
They do.
They genuinely want to help, right? And so when people hear that you're looking for a job, they will, even if it's not what the conversation is about, right? Even if they're like, you sit down for breakfast, they're like, how's it going? You're like, I got laid off a couple weeks ago. It's been rough. How are your kids?
Yeah.
They hold on to that. It stays with them. They want to help you. And it may not happen tomorrow. It may not happen. It might be a month down the road that they're at a party with somebody who is looking for somebody who does what you do. So I think it's just really important to not be embarrassed about it. It's not your fault. So, it's like if you get hit by a car, if you're in an auto, if you're not the driver, if you're not the person causing the accident and you get hit by a car, you're not embarrassed by it. You're not embarrassed because somebody ran a red light and hit you. So it's a good way to think about it, is like, you were the victim of an accident. It's an employment accident. You're the victim in this employment accident. And you're not going to like show up with a broken arm and be like, oh yeah, it's totally my fault. That car hit me. Like, no. So I got hit by the employment car accident, and now I don't have a job, and that's really enough. And they will remember. They want to help.
That's a great point. It kind of brought me back to what we were talking about before we started recording, which is Reddit, and just, yes, there's parts of it that are cesspools, but people want to help. That's how we got here in this conversation.
Yeah.
We want to share info.
One of the best tips though I ever got about Reddit was like, if you need a really specific thing solved, particularly if it's like coding related, this woman said she has 2 accounts. One where she asks the question and then she logs into her other account and gives herself the wrong answer just so men will pile in and give the right answer. She's like, because people may not be incentivized to help, but they love to show motherfuckers wrong.
Oh my God, that's
like,
hilarious.
That's actually genius. So, yeah, but I also think most people want to help, but I guess if you get in a pinch, you could just give yourself bad advice in public and let people contradict your alter ego online.
Smart. Do you guys have anything else you wanted to share before we kind of wrap up?
We're
Well, if
always
you-
looking to, oh, go ahead, Amy.
We're saying the same thing. I was just going to say,
Okay.
if you have been fired, we want to talk to you. And we're willing to do fake names. You don't have to share your real name. We absolutely, that's fine. We're not here to do an investigation about it. We just want to hear the story. And we're on the side of the worker. We're not going to litigate the points of it. We just want to hear the story. So, yeah, hit us up. We're always looking for people with wild stories of getting fired.
Hell yeah. And how can people find the show and get a hold of you?
The best place to find us is via the website, which is at cannedpodcast.com.
Thank you so much for coming on and also for the work that you're doing, supporting the worker and sharing valuable information and stories too, and normalizing getting fired, because I don't know what the statistic is, but I'm sure there is a large statistic of people or portion of people that have been fired. So thank you so much, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Again, big thank you to Pam and Amy for coming on the show and for all the cool work that they do for the workers. And again, if you have not checked out my Patreon, it's patreon.com/talkingshitabout. You can get extra bonus content, early access content, and that is the best way to financially support the show. Right now, I am, well, as of this recording, waiting for my background check to go through at my new job, still doing peer support, but it'll be on call, so my income has dropped a lot. So I could really use some extra support in covering the costs of Zoom Business, Canva Professional, and, just paying the bills to get by. And if you don't have the ability to spend $5 every month, I also have a link to my Amazon wish list in the show notes where you can buy things from like $5 to more to help me build my studio so I can have my own recording space, because right now I just kind of do it around the house wherever I can find surface area, usually my bed. So I would really like to have a professional setup so that way when I do visual elements, it's a little bit more professional. So you can also order things there for me or for my cats. I have some things up there for my cats if you don't give a shit about me, but you love cats. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this episode. Oh, I lied. I have one more thing I want to share. In 2 weeks, I will be releasing the next microsode, and it is a special Pride Month episode, so keep an eye out for that. And now for real, thank you for listening. We'll see you in a couple weeks.